Hi friends, hope all of you are doing well. In today's video, we shall be discussing about the important Governor General of Bengal, Governor General of India, and Viceroys. In this video, particularly, I will be discussing one of the most important Governor General of Bengal, Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings was a person who had introduced the post of district collector. Most of you who will be viewing this video, they want to become a civil servant, they want to become an IAS officer, and the head of the district administration in majority of the states is district collector. So Warren Hastings was the person who had appointed the first district collector in India. So in my previous video, I had already discussed what is the difference between Viceroy, Governor General of India, and it is my humble request that those who are viewing this video, they should also see my previous video, that is Rise of English in Bengal, where I have discussed Robert Clive in length. This video is in continuation with the previous video. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have first given the details of the all the Governor General of Bengal and Governor General of India before revolt of 1857. As you can see, in 1773, the first Governor General of Bengal came up. That was Warren Hastings, and then most after Warren Hastings, the most important Governor General was Lord Cornwallis. He came to India twice. For some time, John Shore was also there. Now you are seeing this word officiating. Officiating means they are not designated. Try to understand one thing, that we are talking about the 18th century. Over at that particular time, we did not have flights. So the Governor General too need to travel to India through sea route. Neither Suez Canal was built, so it used to take months before a Governor General reach India. Till that time, the administration would be handled by somebody, and that he will be called as Governor General of Bengal officiating. I hope I have made myself clear. So there is a list. You can see this list, and Minto, Marquis of Hastings. Now there is a confusion between some people. They often confuse Warren Hastings with Marquis of Hastings. Marquis of Hastings is also written as Lord Hastings, but this Marquis of Hastings is different from Warren Hastings. Then we will see Lord William Bentinck, who will be the last Governor General of Bengal, and he will be the first Governor General of India before freedom in 1833. In 1833, the Governor General of Bengal was redesignated as Governor General of India. And the last Governor General of India was Lord Canning, the Viscount Canning, and he was also the first Viceroy. So let us start with Warren Hastings. See, Warren Hastings was not new to India. Warren Hastings was posted in India previously also. He was earlier into the governors. There was state government. There was no central government earlier. So he was there in the Governors Council of Bengal, and with the arrival of Robert Clive, he was posted to Madras. So let us read. He had served as a member of Calcutta Council or Governor Council from 1761 to 1764, and he was also a member of the Madras Council from 1764 to 1769. So it means that he was well aware about the Indian administration prior to becoming the Governor General of Bengal. And he then served after 1769, he then served as a Governor of Bengal. And then the Regulating Act came in 1773, whereas the Governor of Bengal was redesignated as Governor General of Bengal, and he had subdued the presidencies of Madras and Bombay. It means that the British Parliament had now attempted to make a central government in India. There were state governments, Bombay was there, Madras was there, but there was also now a central government. The Governor of Bengal, he was given twin responsibility. One, he was responsible of Bengal. Second, he was also responsible of the central government of India. So I have mentioned also this act had led to the setting up of central government of India. तो बॉस, अगर कहीं पर भी आपको यूपीएससी में क्वेश्चन आए कि विच वाज द फर्स्ट एक्ट वेयर द ब्रिटिशर्स हैड अटेम्प्टेड टू मेक अ सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट, you have to take a regulating act of 1773. Is it very clear? It's very important. That is why I have this video is fully dedicated to Warren Hastings. Now you see, Warren Hastings, before becoming the Governor General, he had done a lot of reforms. He tried his best to bring land reforms, judicial reforms, but luck never favored him. On the other hand, he had been involved in some kind of corruption, and he was the only governor general so far in the history of India to face impeachment. However, he was not impeached, but impeachment process he has listened to the music of the impeachment. So let us see. Warren Hastings, as the governor of Bengal, not governor general, as the governor of Bengal, requested board directors or court of directors. See, now you should understand that the East India Company was a company, it was not a government. Presently, if you talk about any company, maybe Reliance Private Limited, Airtel Private Limited, any company you talk about, that company has its owner called as shareholders, whereas the management of the company is done by board of directors. So in some books of history, the East India Company, the board of directors are referred as court of directors. That is why I mentioned here board of directors or court of directors. So Warren Hastings had requested the board of directors to remove the dual system of government which was placed by Robert Clive. Now, Robert Clive had put this dual system of government, which I have discussed in the previous video also. Now, in this dual system of government, the collection of revenue was done by deputy subedars. The police, the army, and the criminal justice was in the hands of the British, and the administration of civil justice was done by a Nawab. It was a mockery of the administration. So, as a result, administration had broken down. So Warren Hastings says no dual government, and he had taken all things in his hand, including collection of revenue. So the board of directors also agreed, and they Warren Hastings had removed the deputy divans. You can see Muhammad Reza Khan. He was in charge of the collection of revenue from Bengal. Raja Shitab, who was in charge for the collection of revenue from Bihar, and the power of Nawab of administering civil justice was also taken. So even the civil justice will be now handled by the British. Now, what had happened? The Nawab of Bengal had died. So as a result, they had taken the administration of civil justice from the Nawab, and the new Nawab was a minor. So let us read this point. The newly appointed Nawab of Bengal was a minor Nawab, Nawab Mubarak ud Daula. Thus, Warren Hastings decided to reduce the pension of the Nawab as well from 32 lakhs to 16 lakhs. Remember, Britishers will not leave any opportunity for their own profit. So, they took out the whatever power was bestowed on the Nawab of Bengal, and they also reduced the pension of the Nawab. And they made Mubarak ud Daula, who was a minor, as the Nawab, and Munni Begum as the guardian or the regent of the Nawab. बच्चों, गार्डियन और रीजेंट का मतलब क्या होता है? रीजेंट, REGNT, दैट somebody else is ruling in the name of somebody else. Like we have discussed in the earlier lectures of the Marathas, where I have discussed about the Tarabai and Shivaji too. Similarly, Munni Begum will rule in the name of Nawab Mubarak ud Daula, and for making him as the Nawab, Munni Begum had also paid money to Warren Hastings, which will also be questioned. With this case will be opened up when trial of Nand Kumar will happen later in this video. I will explain this. Now, the treasury from Murshidabad was shifted to Calcutta. Treasury is the main, it's a main place that you can say it is a bank where all the revenue has been kept, and it was moved from Murshidabad to Calcutta. And the complete management of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa were now in the hands of the East India Company. And Nawab was simply pensioned off, had no powers. He was spending his life in the palace of Murshidabad, and later over there he will also build one beautiful palace called as Hazar Duar. We will be discussing about Hazar Duar in art and culture, a video which will be coming very soon. Now, for the purpose of revenue collection and the administration of civil justice, the East India Company had formed a board of revenue and appointed its own officer called collector. Now, previous to this, the collection of revenue was in the hands of the deputy divans. We have read this. Muhammad Reza Khan, he was collecting the revenue, and Raja Shitab was collecting the revenue. Now collectors will collect the revenue from the districts. He had distributed the area of Bengal, Bihar into various districts, and the head of the district was district collector. However, in the present day, the districts in Bengal, in West Bengal and Bihar are headed by district magistrate DM, but previously they had the post of district collector. However, in majority of the states, even today, we are having the post of district collector. So it is mentioned here in 1772 he divided the whole territory of East India Company into districts, and collectors were redesignated as district collector. In 1773, again changes were made in the revenue collection as some British collectors were found to be corrupt and indulged in the private trade, thus were replaced by Indian Diwans. This is a very long issue. The misuse of Dastak, starting from Battle of Plassey, then the time of Mir Jafar, then finally the Battle of Buxar 1764. Mir uh, Qasim had first Mir Jafar was there, then Mir Qasim. Mir Qasim had tried his best to help in stoppage of misuse of dastak by the British officers, but British officers whosoever was posted in India just to collect wealth. So there was high level of corruption and nepotism. However, Warren Hastings will not be successful in curtailing that. But our following Governor General of Bengal, Lord Cornwallis, will take very effective steps to curtail corruption. Now, the British were defeated by Mahadji Scindia, very importantly. Now, what had happened after the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761? The motivation, the morale of the Maratha troops had, declined. They took 10 years to revive themselves. The Maratha Sardar Mahadji Scindia had its center at Gwalior, and similarly, we will have Maratha houses at Nagpur, at Baroda, at Indore. So Mahadji Scindia was the most important one who was in Gwalior, and he defeated the British and he freed the Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II. You have to remember Treaty of Allahabad, which was signed in 1765, where Mughal Emperor accepted that he will remain in Allahabad and he will be paid 26 lakh annual pension by the British, and he will administer Allahabad and Kara. Now, Mughal Emperor was freed and freed from the house arrest which was done by the British at the Allahabad fort, and Mughal emperor decided to go to Delhi under the Maratha protection, and Warren Hastings considered this act of Mughal emperor violating Treaty of Allahabad. Thus, he decided to stop the annual pension of rupees 26 lakh, and he took away, my mistake, and he took away Allahabad Kara from Mughal dominance and sold both the territories to Nawab of Awadh for rupees 50 lakh via Treaty of Banaras. If you remember Treaty of Allahabad, there were two treaties signed. One with Shuja ud Daula, who was the Nawab of Awadh, and the second was with the Shah Alam, who was the Mughal emperor. Now, Shuja ud Daula had surrendered Allahabad and Kara to the British so that the Mughal emperor can administer. Now that area is again sold back to the Nawab of Awadh in lieu of 50 lakhs. See the dichotomy of the situation. Now you have to understand the imperialism of the British here and how clever they were. They took it from the Indian ruler and sold it again to the Indian ruler. Now let us see about Treaty of Banaras. See, Treaty of Banaras was in 1773. Now the governor of Bengal became Governor General of Bengal, and he was pressurized, to earn more money because the East India Company was in losses. Firstly, he said that the Nawab of Awadh, who was using the British troops for various uses, he has to increase the money for that from 30,000 to 2,10,000. So remember Treaty of Allahabad. If you don't remember Treaty of Allahabad, Treaty of Banaras, you will not be able to understand. British handed over Allahabad and Kara to the Nawab of Awadh on the payment of rupees 50 lakh. For providing military assistance against Rohilla, the Nawab will have to pay additional amount of rupees 40 lakh. See, Warren Hastings, he knew when he was signing Treaty of Allahabad that the Nawab of Awadh had plans in his mind, and in the back of the mind he wants to attack Rohilla. He said, you attack anybody, you have to pay the sum of 2,10,000. But if you want to attack Rohilla, you have to pay additional amount of 40 lakhs. See, Rohilla was very close to the heart of the Nawab of Awadh because they were sharing the boundaries. And if you have seen Treaty of Allahabad, sorry, my mistake, if you have seen Battle of Panipat, Third Battle of Panipat, Rohillas and the Nawab of Awadh, they fought with Abdali against the Marathas. But now, after Abdali going, the Nawab of Awadh want to increase his dominance over the area. That is why he signed a treaty with the British so that he can use British troops to defeat the other local rulers. The biggest problem till revolt of 1857 will be that majority of the prince, the majority of the Indian prince and the Indian kingdom, they will be busy in wars. They will not be doing the general administration. They will not be looking for the welfare of the people. This will be one of the cause where that is why people of India did not supported revolt of 1857 wholeheartedly. It was actually a battle of self interest. Somebody was losing kingdom and somebody had some military issues, but Aam Aadmi did not had any much issues. So we'll look into that angle also when we'll come to revolt of 1857. So as a treaty of Banaras was signed, so it was guessed the immediate precedent event was Rohilla war. Now Rohilla Khand, which we called, is the modern day Rampur, Ramnagar, Saharanpur, Muzaffarnagar. This area was dominated by the Rohillas. Now the Rohilla chief and the Nawab of Awadh first feared the attack of the Marathas. Remember, in 1771, Marathas Madhaji Scindia had also attacked the Britishers and defeated the Britishers. So their biggest danger were from Madhaji Scindia, whose state was Gwalior state, which was neighboring Awadh. So Rohilla and Nawab of Awadh were frightened as Marathas might take revenge of Third Battle of Panipat. I told you, Rohilla and Nawab of Awadh, they fought against the Marathas and they helped Abdali. So the Marathas had attacked Rohilla Khand, but after seeing the joint army of Rohilla, Nawab of Awadh and British troops, Maratha had returned back. So the Marathas had attacked Rohilla Khand, and but when they were attacking the Rohilkhand, the Rohilla army was now been with the Rohilla army. They also saw the army of the Awadh. They also saw the British troops. So Marathas thought that it is not the right time, so they pulled back. Now Nawab of Awadh pressurized the Rohilla leader that you please pay rupees 40 lakhs because I have helped you against the Maratha invasion. Rohilla chief failed to give the amount, and Nawab knew that he will be failing to give the amount, and as a result, with the British troops, he captured majority of the areas of Rohilkhand and left only Rampur for the rule of the Rohilla chief. So Rohilla war was actually a very fruitful for Nawab of Awadh, and Britishers got 40 lakhs for doing so. But some British officers thought more money could be made out of this, but unfortunately we made only 40 lakhs. Now Treaty of Faizabad. My dear friends, please note down very importantly, before 1775 the capital of Awadh was Faizabad. After 1775, the new Nawab Asaf ud Daula, he had shifted his capital from Faizabad to Lucknow. Majority of the historical monuments like Bada Imam Bada was built by Asaf ud Daula, who was the Nawab of Awadh. He became the Nawab of Awadh in 1775. Now there is a new Nawab, so Britishers again have a nose to it. They want to make money of this situation. So they, in order to recognize Asif ud Daula, the new Nawab, they signed Treaty of Faizabad. So let us read. After the Rohilla War, the East India Company wanted more money from Nawab of Awadh. Therefore, Warren Hastings had pressurized the new Nawab Asif ud Daula to sign this treaty. The amount of money paid by the Nawab for using troops of the East India Company was further increased from 2,10,000 to 2,60,000. Remember, I told you, any opportunity if they get, they will like to use it. They would like to mint money. Next, see, the Zamindari of Banaras will be given permanently to the East India Company. Now, ladies and gentlemen, before this treaty was signed, the Banaras had a feudal lord. He was called Kasi Raj or Raja of Banaras, and he was a feudal lord of the Nawab of Awadh. It means he used to collect the revenue from Banaras and deposit it with Nawab of Awadh. Now, Britishers said, we will recognize you as Nawab of Awadh, but you have to give us Banaras. So the in Treaty of Faizabad, Nawab of Awadh surrendered Banaras to the British. Okay, now see the feudal lord or the zamindar of Banaras, who was under the Nawab of Awadh, had to now serve under the East India Company. Thus, Raja of Banaras, Chet Singh, had to pay 22 lakhs to the East India Company to reconfirm his zamindari. What a shame! It was his own territory, and he has to again pay 22 lakhs illegally to the East India Company just to see that he is not been removed from the post of zamindar. See, now you understand how much greedy was the British and the imperial interest in the 18th century. So now you are able to understand what is Treaty of Banaras, Rohilla War, and Treaty of Faizabad. All three you can understand after understanding Treaty of Allahabad, which was signed in 1765. Now we will look towards the land reforms. As we have discussed earlier, the Warren Hastings, after ending the dual governance system, he also took the collection of revenue in his own hands. So now it is his duty, it is the duty of Warren Hastings that how he will make money for the East India Company, how he will be able to collect revenue for the East India Company. For doing so, he initially appointed the collectors. We talked about it. He appointed the district collectors, but majority of them were engaged into the corrupt practices. As a result, they were again replaced by Indian divans. See, I told you, Indian district collectors were there, but the district collectors were, they were looking for their own trades. They did not bother in collection of revenue. So when the revenue was not coming, so the Warren Hastings thought it is better to recruit Indians as the collector. Now, let us see. So after Indian divans were made there, but still the revenue, what he thought, what he had assumed, did not come. So he experimented something called as a 5-year settlement, which was later called as annual settlement. So in this particular experiment, he said that he will auction off the land. See, before this land reforms, the land used to belong to two persons. One who is doing the farming, that is the royat or the farmer or the peasant. First was that landowner. Second landowner was the zamindar. He said now the land, all the land will belong to the state. It means that all the land will belong to the East India Company. Now anybody who wants to do the agriculture on that land has to take the land for 5 years from East India Company. Again, I am repeating myself. The British government or the East India Company declared that all the land will now not belong to zamindar, will not belong to the farmer, it will belong to the East India Company. Anybody who wants to practice farming will have to take it on lease, not purchase. Nobody can purchase. Will have to take it on lease for 5 years. Even today, if you want to buy a land from the state government, majority of the state government will lease you for 99 years. They will not make you the owner of the land. So this came from this 5-year system, and they said you anybody who wants to do the farming should take the land for 5 years lease. So this was introduced in 1772, and it was a miserable thing. It got failed, and in 1776 it was turned into the annual settlement, which also did not work. And permanently the zamindari system will work, which we will discuss in the next video when I will be doing Cornwallis. So now you see the zamindars and the peasants were deprived from their hereditary right over the land. Very important. They were deprived from the hereditary land. They said you are not the owner. You have to take the land from lease from us. See, so much greedy they were. The land under the quinquennial system will belong to the state, and state means East India Company, and the land was auctioned off to the highest bidder. Very important. The land was auctioned. So whosoever was the highest bidder will be given that land. So now what will happen? People will bid so much, but they will not be able to pay. So they will become defaulter. So East India will Company will again get Babuji ka Tullu. So let us see who had bidded the land in consideration of paying the highest land revenue to the East India Company. So somebody said I will give 1 lakh, other said I will give 1,20,000. So highest bidder got the land for 5 years. But at the end of the termination of 5 years, when the revenue had to be paid, they defaulted, they ran away. So let us see. The quinquennial system was a miserable due to the following reasons. The officers of the East India Company themselves participated in the bidding to their servant. Even Warren Hastings himself was not free from this greed. See, Warren Hastings, the Governor General himself, was not free from the greed. There was a case where where he had made his made his servant child who was 10-year old, Kuntu Babu, to auction. Kuntu Babu was said, you if somebody says 2 lakhs, you say 4 lakhs. So the land was given to a Kuntu Babu. From this, we have the system of Benami. See, Benami properties are there in India, and even today, Government of India and the state governments are striving hard to fight with these Benami property. So, the payer is somebody else, the ownership is in somebody's else name, and the user is third party. So even today, even the black money, the black money is parked in the very similar manner. There are fictitious persons, or I will say ghost persons, and the land is purchased on the name of the ghost person, but it is being utilized by somebody else. So this is called Benami property. The bidders had no not the bidders had no permanent interest in the land. Thus, they failed to build irrigational facilities, which adversely affected revenue in future. The bidders charged exorbitant taxes from the farmers, which made life of the farmers miserable, and overburdened farmers left farming and became migrant laborers at Calcutta and other towns. Understand this. The bidders, they charge so much rate because they had to pay so much revenue to the what they have promised. But as a result, the farmers was not able to pay their taxes, and the farmers left the farmer, and they became the migrant labor. Even today the same is happening. If nobody is getting employment in the villages, they are coming to the metropolitan cities, and they are becoming the migrant labor. In the lockdown, we have seen at various places so many migrant laborers are there, and we have seen that government of India has started the special train services so that the migrant laborers can be carried back to the villages. So it is very important, my dear friends who will become future IAS. It is my deepest request from my humble from my heart, that once you become a district collector or DM, please try to generate employment in the rural sectors. If our rural sectors will have employment, if it will have development, automatically lot many problems of our economy will get solved. Coming back to the history, the Indian bidders also ran away with the revenue collected instead of depositing with the collectors. See, they had a heavy bag, so why to deposit it with the bidders? They also ran away. Thus, the outcome of this system was many revenue bidders fell in heavy errors. Many ran away, like Mule Choksi's, Vijay Mallya, and many had to be arrested for default. And the farmer deserted the land. So 5 years, no agriculture. So you can imagine how miserable was this system. After the expiry of the quinquennial system in 1776, Warren Hastings reverted to the system of annual settlement on the basis of open auction again, and preferences were now given to the zamindars. So he understood that it is very difficult to take out revenue from the Indians. Only Indians will be able to take out. The collectors and kanungos were reappointed. Kanungos are the posts which are still in a lot of state governments. They are responsible, like Patwari, of measuring the land revenue. They decide what will be the stamp duty. If you want to, in present day, if you purchase a land from somebody, you have to get it registered. So in the registry, the state government charges you the stamp duty. The stamp duty is been fixed by kanungos. Next, Warren Hastings, he failed to set up a satisfactory land system, land revenue system. As a result, later Lord Cornwallis will come and he will replace annual settlement into permanent settlement called as the zamindari system. Similarly, we will see in Madras and in Bombay presidency something called as Mehelwadi and Rayotwadi system will also come up. Next, coming to judicial reforms. See, now the problems in judicial reforms. Firstly, there was no common law, neither no criminal law nor civil law. And if you bring a new law immediately, majority of the people will not understand because they were not knowing English. The Britishers were very proud of their language and they wanted to bring their law in a common law, which Warren Hastings did not bring, but his successor, Lord Cornwallis, will bring. And Warren Hastings, he said, let us, he also attempted to codify some kind of civil laws, the personal laws. In fact, in your polity, there is a directive principle of state policy, Uniform Civil Code. My dear students, even today we have a uniform criminal code. Uniform criminal code means whether a Hindu, whether a Muslim, whether a male, whether a female, if he or she commits a crime, the punishment is same. But there is no uniform civil personal law. So let us, we will be looking at, we will be discussing that more in polity. But for you to understand, let us first go with judicial reforms of 1772. So during the era of dual government, that is between 1765 to 1772, the zamindars decided the civil and criminal cases, and English were least bothered. So the zamindar had their own court, and later, the servants of the East India Company, the servants of the British officers of the East India Company, like you have seen Kuntu Babu, they will also act like a judge. At some places, at At some places, servants and agents of the East India Company played the role of the judges. Warren Hastings, after removing the dual system of government, had attempted to build judiciary on the Mughal model. Very important. So he said, let me not mingle with the culture of India. And what was the judicial system in the Mughal era? Let me follow it for that. At this levels, he had established the Diwani Adalat for civil cases. Very important. And Faujdari Adalat for the criminal cases. Even today, in some districts of Uttar Pradesh, you have Diwani Adalats and Faujdari Adalats. The appeal to these courts could be made to Sadar Diwani Adalat and Sadar Nizamat Adalat. They used to act like high courts. We will be also studying about Supreme Court of Bengal, which came in 1774. It was one of the provision of the Regulating Act of 1773. But however, these Faujdari Adalat, Diwani Adalat, the Sadar Nizamat Adalat, they were there for the trial of the Indian subject, whereas the Supreme Court was there for the trial of the English subjects. However, there was a lot of confusion between that, but this confusion will be solved by the successor of Warren Hastings, Lord Cornwallis. For now, you have to understand what is Diwani Adalat and what is Sadar Adalat. So Diwani Adalat and Faujdari Adalat are at district level. So I have written Diwani Adalat is a civil court at the district level, whereas the Faujdari court is a criminal court at the district level. The Diwani Adalat is presided by a district collector, but the Faujdari Adalat, it has a jury, it has some Indian officers as well as the qazis. For the civil cases, a district collector can also hear cases like inheritance, like dispute of will. Nowadays we are hearing that the children are fighting for their ancestral property, the same thing. The caste, the marriage and the loans, these are all civil matters. The civil cases up to the sum of rupees 500 was decided in the Diwani Adalat. And for appealing against the court, the decision of this court, one has to go to the Diwani Adalat at Calcutta. Now, in the criminal court, who is the judges? The Indian officials and as well as the qazis. But to see that there is no unfair justice, the district collector also used to exercise some kind of power on these courts. Shariat law. Now, Shariat law is a Muslim law. See, Mughals, when they came to India, they had enforced Shariat law. So, Shariat law was used in giving justice. So, in Shariat law, there is different punishment for a crime to given to a Muslim, and there is a different punishment given to a non-Muslim. For appealing against this code, one has to go to the Sadar Diwani Adalat, which is at Calcutta. So now let us look towards the High Court. In Calcutta, the highest appellate court for civil cases was Sadar Diwani Adalat. It was presided by Indian officials and the British officials of the East India Company. The Sadar Nizamat Adalat, which was the High Court for criminal cases, it was presided by a Qazi, Deputy Nizam, and who was appointed by the East India Company, and three Maulvis. Now, Maulvis are the persons who are, are having depth knowledge of the Islamic law. So they were deciding the criminal law. However, after the Enforcement of Regulating Act of 1773, the Supreme Court of Calcutta was established, and the Supreme Court was established only for the trial of the British officer. So, very important. The Supreme Court was established, but the Supreme Court was established for the trial of the British official. My dear friends, not for the Indians. It was for the Britishers. Excuse me. However, the Supreme Court also started entering the petitions of the Indian trials, and as a result, there was often clash over the jurisdiction with the Sadar Nizamat and the Sadar Diwani Adalat, because Supreme Court was there only for the Britishers, but they started trying the Indians also. So before the establishment of Supreme Court of Calcutta in 1774, Mayor Court used to function since 1758 for the trial of the British officials. So if the question comes, the Supreme Court of Bengal had replaced the Mayor's Court of Calcutta, it is absolutely correct. This reminds me of one more thing, that after we have reached revolt of 1857, I will practice questions with you. Is it very clear? So I will practice some questions with you. If you want that I should have that video of questions, you should please write in the comment box. To further remove the confusion between Supreme Court of Calcutta and the Sadar courts, I had made this table. The Supreme Court of Calcutta, it was presided by the British judges, whereas the Sadar Nizamat and Diwali, English officials, Qazis, Maulvis, Indian officials. Supreme Court of Bengal was established in 1774 after the Enforcement of Regulating Act, whereas the Sadar Nizamat Adalats were established in 1772 by the orders of the Governor General of Bengal. Its jurisdiction was British officials, and however, informally they started the trial of Indian cases, whereas the Sadar Adalats, they had the jurisdiction of Indians only. Law applicable in the Supreme Court was English laws, whereas law applicable here was Shariat law, Muslim personal law, and Hindu personal law. Now, to remove the friction between the Supreme Court of Calcutta and Sadar Diwani and Nizamat Adalats in October 1740, my mistake, it is October 1780. In October 1780, he had appointed who had appointed Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings had appointed Sir Ampe as a Chief Justice of Supreme Court and power to the superintendence of Sadar Adalat. So this was then attempt to remove the dispute of jurisdiction. Warren Hastings, he had made one of the judge as the Chief Justice, and he said you will also have the superintendence power of the Sadar Adalats. But this post of Chief Justice was struck down in 1782 by the directors of the East India Company. There was an ego of the directors of the East India Company that you have not asked for this step, and so we will not validate this step. So that is why the Chief Justice post was removed. Now, for you to understand, please look at this. Supreme Court of Calcutta, it was established in 1774, formally authorized to do the trial of British people only, informally started the trial of Indians and Europeans. Now, if any civil case is there at district level, one has to go to the Diwani Adalat. For criminal, one has to go to the Faujdari Adalat. Appeal against it to is to Sadar Nizamat and Sadar Diwani Adalat. And some people who were not happy with that, they used to go to Supreme Court of Calcutta also, but the Supreme Court of Calcutta did not had any power to do so. Let us see the commercial. So commercial reforms. Now the issue was the corruption and the misuse of dastak. So he, after becoming Governor General, he warned British officers again that don't involve into private trade, but none of them cared. In order to see that the custom duty is being collected. So he had made 5 custom posts on the banks of river Hooghly. One was Hooghly itself, other was Calcutta. So these were the five custom houses where the ships on the Ganga River and the Hooghly River were stopped for customs. And he made efforts to develop trade relations with Bhutan and Tibet also. Now we will start with the Regulating Act of 1773. Now, Regulating Act of 1773, I told you from in the beginning of this video, it is very important because it had established a central government in India. The company wanted to make one person responsible for the administration of East India Company in India. So as a result, and as a result, it was talked in the British Parliament that who should be made responsible, and they passed the Regulating Act. Let us read. The company was facing a financial crisis at this time and had applied to the British government for a loan of £1 million. Now imagine I am a East India Company officer and I'm posted to India, and when I come back I'm a millionaire. I'm having my own mansion. I'm buying my own mansion, but the East India Company is not making profit, and they're demanding government for some loan, some exemption. So something was going wrong. So the British Parliament decided now we have to look towards East India Company, because East India Company has got a large area under its which has been ruled indirectly by the British Parliament. So they decided to regulate the activities of the East India Company. The East India Company had to pay 4 lakh pound yearly to the British government for maintaining monopoly status. Remember, when East India Company was constituted in 1600, so it was decided that only East India Company will be able to trade with India. No other British entrepreneur or British company will come and trade in India. So it is a monopoly. Right now, the example of monopoly is railways. We don't have Reliance Railway, we don't have Ambani Railway, we don't have Mittal Railway, we don't have Gupta Railway, we have only Indian Railway. So it is enjoying a monopoly status. Similarly, the East India Company also enjoyed a monopoly status of trading with India. No private company or no other company of the British could trade with India. So, for maintaining that status, the East India Company had to pay the British government 4 lakh pound. So, they are not paying 4 lakh pound, they are requesting for 1 lakh pound. So, this revealed that there is large number of gross malpractices of the senior officials of the company. The East India Company used to export tea from India. Now, what had happened? There was a lot of corruption and malpractices. On top of that, the problem arose, that was American War of Independence. In America, the local people, the continent, the American colonies, they started raising voice against the imperial rule, the British rule in America. And you must have read, if you have not read, if you have not understood, I will make a video on that. In American War of Independence, there is something called as Boston Tea Party. In Boston Tea Party, nothing, there is no tea party. What had happened? Some American revolutionary, they have climbed up to the British ships and they have thrown the tea of the ship into the water. So the East India Company, who used to export tea from India to America, has stopped. The East India Company used to export tea from India and further sell it in America, but somehow 85% of the tea imported from India was rotting at the East India Company warehouses in London. The British Parliament found it necessary now to regulate the activities of the East India Company, and for this, Regulating Act of 1773 was passed. Now, let us read the provisions. Firstly, all British territories in India will become subordinate to Governor General of Bengal. I will explain it in the further table. The Governor of Bengal was elevated to Governor General of Bengal, very importantly, and the Governor of Madras, Bombay will be subordinate to the Governor General of Bengal. Thus, Warren Hastings became the first Governor General of Bengal. Now, see this. Now the CM has been given the power of PM also. He is sitting on twin seats. One is of PM and other is of CM. The Governor General of Bengal is responsible for the administration of Bengal state government. He is also the responsible for the administration of India. He is heading both state and central government. The Governor of Madras he is responsible for the administration of Madras only, and the Governor of Bombay he is responsible for the administration of Bombay. Apart from making a central government, there was a need to have an executive council or the Governor General's Council. There was an establishment of Governor General of Bengal's Executive Council. Now there will be a member of 4 members will be advising the Governor General what to do. Now this led to the foundation of cabinet system of India. Ladies and gentlemen, as you are aware that in India we follow the parliamentary system of government where the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister, they advise the President. All the decisions of Government of India are taken in the name of President of India, but the advice is given by the Council of Ministers. Similarly, in this particular case, there were four executive council members, and they used to discuss it with Governor General, and they used to advise this particular step used to happen. The Governor General will carry on the administration by the help of 4 members of the Executive Council. The Executive Council of the Governor General was also called as the Supreme Council of Bengal. So, in some places, in some questions, just to confuse you, instead of Executive Council, they might write Supreme Council of Bengal. The decision of the council will be taken on majority basis and the Governor General having merely a casting vote in case of equal division. Very importantly. So it was not that the Governor General can overrule the advice of the Executive Council. The Governor General has to go with the advice of the Executive Council. But if there is that there were 4 members, if 2 says this work has to be done and 2 says this work should not be done, then the vote of the Governor General will come to power and Governor General will decide what to be done. The councillors who were appointed by the British parliaments before reaching India had a strong prejudice. Now, what do you mean by prejudice? They had the opinion, back of their mind, they thought Warren Hastings is a very corrupt mind, very corrupt person, and they were not very positive about Warren Hastings. So, the consular came and Warren Hastings also did not give them due respect. They were not welcomed properly. So they also had a fiction against Warren Hastings, which will later result into something called as trial of Nand Kumar. And later when Warren Hastings reached back to Britain, then the impeachment process will start. Next, it prohibited the servants of company from engaging in any private trade or accepting presents or bribe from the natives. So Warren Hastings was saying, now officially it came, the British Parliament said any East Indian Company official should not accept any bribe or should not involve in private trade. However, this did not happen because no strong measures were taken. It will be taken by the successor of Warren Hastings, Lord Cornwallis. A Supreme Court was to be established at Fort William at Calcutta with British judges for the trial of British citizens only. Understand, it is for the people who are East India Company employees. If they are doing something wrong, the Supreme Court can punish them. But Supreme Court moved access to its jurisdiction and started trying the Indian subjects also. Now, the second other important act which came during the time of Warren Hastings was the Pitt's India Act, and because of the passage of Pitt's India Act, 2 people resigned. One was the Prime Minister of Britain, Fox, and second was the Governor General of Bengal himself, Warren Hastings. Warren Hastings was also not happy in the manner the act was, the bill of Pitt's India Act was introduced in the British Parliament. So let us see. It was also known, see the East India Companies Act, in history books we call it as Pitt's India Act, but it is actually named as East India Companies Act. It was also known as the Act of Settlement. It distinguished between the commercial and the political functions of the company. I'd like to take a pause here. See, there was a great demand in the London and in the whole Britain that firstly the British government should take away the monopoly of the East India Company, and in subsequent years the monopoly of the East India Company will be finished. Secondly, the large amount of army is being used by the East India Company. Now the army is also paid from the exchequer money of the British citizens. So British citizen says, why for a private company so much expense has been done? So it was now very much required to have further control on East India Company and to distinguish between the commercial and the political activities of the East India Company. So we will see this. Second point. Initially, the bill was rejected in the House of Lords. Like we have Raj Sabha and the Lok Sabha, the upper house and the lower house. Similarly, the British Parliament has House of Lords and House of Commons. Therefore, then Prime Minister Fox had to resign. The only occasion where a British minister or ministry has to tender its resignation due to Indian affairs. Thus, the new Prime Minister who got the act formulated was William Pitt. That is why it is called as Pitt India Act. Hence, this act was famously called as Pitt's India Act of 1784. Against the backdrop and the criticism circulated by Francis. Now, Sir Francis was one of the member of the Executive Council of the Governor General of Bengal. As you have read before, that when the members of the Executive Council or the councillors came to India, they had a prejudice about the Warren Hastings. They were not liking Warren Hastings. So when Sir Francis came back to Britain, he started talking to the government, he started talking to MPs, and he told them what un-British rule is happening in India. So he provoked a general consensus that the Regulating Act of 1773 hadn't been sufficient to regain or to finish all the alleged excess. Still corruption is going on. Excess, what do you mean by alleged excess? That the British rule is not being implemented in India. The corruption is there. The East India Company officials are not bothered. So the British government now intended to address the shortcomings of the Regulating Act of 1773. Very importantly, they wanted that more control should be there on the East India Company. The British cabinet, by enacting Pitt's India Act, desired to have certain control of the East India Company. Following were the requirements in bringing this legislation. Number one, the people in Britain were asking in large numbers to end the monopoly of the East India Company, and in subsequent years it will happen. The East India Company was using British resources like army for its political and commercial ambitions, but in return, the revenue given to the crown did not match the costs. On regular basis, corruption, private trade, nepotism of officials of the East India Company were exposed through the newspapers in Britain. So in this video, I will also tell you the first newspaper of India, that was the Bengal Gazette or the Hitchcock's Bengal Gazette. The first newspaper of India also came during the time of Warren Hastings. So let us see the provisions of the Pitt's India Act. A board of control, very importantly, board of control, which will be later called as Indian House. A board of control in London was set up to administrate all revenue, civil and military affairs of the East India Company. This step had led to dual form of governments. I will say it led to the dual form of administration of East India Company. While the Executive Council of the Governor General of Bengal was reduced to three from four. See, earlier in the Regulating Act, the Executive Council members were four. Now it will be three. The Act also prohibited all aggressive wars. During the tenure of Warren Hastings, three major wars happened. First was the Rohilla War. Second was the First Anglo-Maratha War. Remember the Raghunath Roy cause. Second was the Second Anglo-Maratha, Second Anglo-Mysore War with Hyder Ali. So they said, no more wars. You have wasted a lot of money in wars. First, you make profit. To make you understand, see this: the reporting structure after the enforcement of Pitt's India Act 1784. Now you see, there was Governor General of Bengal was there. Now he will give two reports. He will first give to report to the Court of Directors, reporting all the commercial activities. He will also report to the Board of Control, reporting political and war activities. Now, Board of Control will tell to the British Parliament that so much army men has been used, so much army has been used by the East India Company. The Court of Directors of the East India Company will just give that money for the monopoly, and will give the share, the dividend, give share in the profit. Very importantly, will give share in the profit, and that will ultimately reach to the British Crown. I hope it is very much clear and elucidated to all of you. Now, other important happenings. Warren Hastings faced a very complicated situation in India when he became the Governor General. Marathas gained power after the Third Battle of Panipat. They took 10 years, but they were now on their own feet. They were much more powerful. So Marathas also had some political struggle. Like Raghunath Roy wanted to become the Peshwa, which I've already discussed in the previous videos. So Warren Hastings faced a very complicated situation when he became the Governor General of Bengal. Marathas, after Third Battle of Panipat, regained the power by 1771. The Maratha Sardar Mahadaji Scindia fought the British and made Mughal Emperor free and moved him to Delhi. And in 1803, when we will see the Second Anglo-Maratha War, the Britishers will take back Delhi from the Marathas, and Shah Alam will again become a pensioner of the English, which I've discussed in the previous videos. If you have not seen, I will be mentioning down in the comment section. The internal power struggle in Maratha court, Raghunath Roy, made British to confront Marathas, culminating into the First Anglo-Maratha War, 1775 to 1782, where British finally had to give up and signed a Treaty of Salbai. In South, Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan were also a cause of worry, resulting into Second Anglo-Maratha War. The British were also facing hostilities in American colonies. See, I mentioned there the need to bring regulating act. The T has been thrown out. So American War of Independence is also going on from 1775 to 1783. Thus, the export of Indian tea was not being sold at America, which resulted into huge losses for East India Company. Is it very clear? Next is Chet Singh, that is Raja of Banaras, and affairs of Begum of Awadh. Okay, let us see this. The Anglo wars with the Maratha and Mysore generally strained the financial resources of the East India Company. Before I progress, I would like to make you understand one thing. See, understand the situation of Warren Hastings. He is into Rohilla War. He is into this war, Maratha Wars, Mysore Wars, and the members of the Executive Council are accusing him for every wrongdoing. They're pressurizing him for more money. The revenue collection is not there. He had failed miserably in the quinquennial system. He had failed in the annual settlement system. So the revenue collection of the land is also not there. Now, what will happen? He has to take more money. So anybody who comes to him that there is a lot of money in that prince treasury, there is so much money in that particular fort, so much money in that particular palace, Warren Hastings is simply believing him. And Warren Hastings is, he is dreaming that there is so much money, so he is attacking that particular Raja, he's attacking that particular prince, he's attacking that particular Begum just to take out the money from his royal treasury. So similar were the cases with Chet Singh and affairs of Begum of Awadh. See what happened. They were first, the Nawab of Awadh was Suja ud Daula, and in 1775 from the Treaty of Faizabad it was Asif ud Daula. Suja ud Daula had number of wives, and all wives were designated as Begum of Awadh, and they had their personal treasury which they did not share with the Nawab of Awadh. So let us read about it. In 1775, the Nawab of Awadh, Suja ud Daula, had died, and his son Asif ud Daula was made as the new Nawab. Taking the advantages of the situation, Warren Hastings again negotiated what was committed in the Treaty of Benares in 1773. Thus, that new treaty was Treaty of Faizabad, which we have already read. Through this treaty, the company forced Nawab to surrender Benares to the East India Company, which they had sold back to the Chet Singh for 22 lakhs, as I have told you again. After the treaty, the new Nawab had shifted his capital from Faizabad to Lucknow. Remember, I told you Asif ud Daula, who was one of the founder of Lucknow, he shifted the capital of Awadh from Faizabad to Lucknow. A part of the Treaty of Faizabad was also signed with Chet Singh. Chet Singh agreed Chet Singh agreed to pay 22 lakhs to the East India Company, and East India Company also promised that they will not demand extra except rupees 22 lakhs one time they had given. Now, what had happened? There was a declining financial position of the East India Company. Why? The revenue system, quinquennial and annual system, failed. Three major wars took place, no money, and they have to demand from the British Crown for the money. So instead of demanding from British Crown, Warren Hastings decided to raid on the royal treasury of the Indian princes. So let us read. The declining financial position of the East India Company forced Warren Hastings to demand additional 5 lakhs from Chet Singh in 1778. Similar demands were repeated in 1709 and 1780. See, in 1778 and 79, Yeltsin honored the demand, but he did not have so much treasury that all the demands he could make. Yeltsin also offered personal bribe of rupees 2 lakh to Warren Hastings for not making any more demands in 1780. Warren Hastings further imposed unwarranted fine of rupees 50 lakhs on Raja Chet Singh. Failure to pay, he himself marched to Banaras and removed Chet Singh and made his nephew Mahip Narayan as a new Raja of Banaras, as he promised to pay rupees 40 lakhs annually. However, he was not even to pay even 22 lakhs. See, he was in hunger of having more money. Warren Hastings marched, and then also Raja Chet Singh, he removed his turban, he put it in the foot of Warren Hastings, said that whatever I have, I will give it to you. Please don't remove him. And he was removed in a humiliating manner, which was not acceptable. And he made his nephew as the new Raja, and he promised that I will give you this much, but he gave zero money to the East India Company because he himself did not had any money. Disappointed by Banaras, Warren Hastings turned his eyes towards Awadh. Now the Nawab of Awadh, remember, now the Nawab of Awadh is Asif ud Daula. Asif ud Daula said, my mother, Begum of Awadh, has lot of treasury. Please attack her. You will get lot of money. So the Nawab was in debt of 15 lakhs. Who? The Nawab of Awadh was debt 15 lakhs, which he had to pay to the East India Company. The Nawab suggested for British military assistance so that he can overpower his mother Umat ur Johra Begum, the Begum of Awadh, and took all her treasure, from which he will be able to pay the English. English supported the Nawab. However, when they opened the treasury of Begum of Awadh, they again got disappointed as it was empty. So, unnecessary, he raided Raja Chet Singh of Banaras and Begum of Awadh. Now, other thing what he did is the codification of religious personal law. See, he attempted to codify both Hindu personal law and Muslim personal law, but he gave up the cause of codifying Muslim personal law because of the agitation and protest shown by the ulemas and the qazis. However, he was successful in codifying Hindu personal law, and even today we have an act called as Hindu Personal Act. So Manu Smriti was translated into English and was given the title of Code of Gentoo Laws. Very important. With the help of William Jones, very important person, he was able to he had translated the Manusmriti into English and he gave it the name as Code of Gentoo Laws. William Jones, we will read it in the history because he was also the founder of Asiatic Society of Bengal. So let us read about the Asiatic Society of Bengal also. The Asiatic Society was founded by the British civil servant Sir William Jones on 15th January 1784. In 1832, the name got changed. It was earlier Asiatic Society, then it was changed as Asiatic Society of Bengal, and still the Asiatic Society of Bengal as an NGO, it is still functioning in West Bengal in Calcutta. It has a very good library. They are doing what is the main work of Asiatic Society of Bengal. They do the research work on Indian subjects, on Indian literature, on Indian philosophy, on Indian mythological subject, on Indian sciences. So let us read. In January 1784, Sir William Jones sent out a circular or a letter to selected number of British residents at Calcutta with a view to establish this society. That time, NGOs were also called as societies. Even today, we have societies like the cooperative societies. So it was visualized as the Center for Asian Study. Very important. So it was visualized as the center of Asian studies, including everything concerning a man nature within the geographical limits of the continent. From 1784 to 1828, only Europeans were elected as the members to the society. In 1829, an initiative was taken by H. H. Wilson. A number of Indians were elected to the members, which included Diwakar Tagore, uh, Swachandra Das, Maharaja Baidyanath Roy. The earlier, the all the presidents and all the office bearers of the society were Britishers, but in 1829, Indians were also given the opportunity. Right now, the members of the Asiatic Society of Bengal are all Indians. One of the founding member of the Asiatic Society was Charles Wilson. Remember, Asiatic Society of Bengal was founded by William Jones, but Charles Wilson was one of the member. He was the first person to translate Bhagavad Gita into English. So often there is a confusion. Who codified the Manusmriti into Code of Gentoo Laws? So the option will be A. Charles Wilson, B. William Jones. So there will be purposely UPSC will put both the options. Remember, it is William Jones. William Jones. William Jones. Founder of Asiatic Society, William Jones. The person who had translated Manusmriti and made Code of Gentoo Laws, William Jones. And the person who had translated Bhagavad Gita into English is Charles Wilson. Is it very clear? Now, the first newspaper of India that was called as the Bengal Gazette, and in some books it is also called as Hitchcock's Bengal Gazette because he was the person behind it. It was the first newspaper to be printed in Asia. Very importantly, it was the first newspaper to be printed in Asia, and it was published for 2 years. Now, this person used to accuse all the activities of Warren Hastings. He used to be a biggest critic of Warren Hastings. So Warren Hastings had sealed his newspaper. So it was founded by James Augustus Hickey. He was an Irishman. The newspaper was a strong hit of the administration of Governor General Warren Hastings. That is why it was seized off in 1782. Now, Nand Kumar. Nand Kumar, in some books, it is also written as Maharaja Nand Kumar. He was an aristocrat. He was a big zamindar. He used to collect revenues. And because of this, Warren Hastings has to face the music of impeachment. So let us read about him. After the Enforcement of Regulating Act, the Governor General of Bengal had to be assisted by an executive council consisting of 4 members, which we have discussed. Out of the 4 members, 3 had a very strong prejudice of Warren Hastings being corrupt. Very important. 3 meant that you are very corrupt. Warren Hastings was very corrupt. Thus, they were looking for an opportunity where corruption and nepotism complaint against Warren Hastings comes up. See, the Nand Kumar was hanged in 1775, but Warren Hastings remained the Governor General of Bengal in 1785. When he returned back to Britain, then Sir Francis, which I've spoken earlier also, he was one of the member of the Executive Council. He started general consensus against the wrong act of Warren Hastings in respect to Nand Kumar. So Nand Kumar, who was a tax collector, Indian Diwan, had accused Warren Hastings with the charge of corruption and nepotism, thus gave the members of Executive Council a window of opportunities to defame Warren Hastings. After Battle of Buxar, Robert Clive had recommended uh, and appointed Nand Kumar as Indian Dewan for Hooghly, Burdwan and Nadia district. This portfolio was held with Warren Hastings till 1764. See, Robert Clive had accused Warren Hastings that he was not able to collect so much of revenue from these three areas. So that is why he removed him and he put Nand Kumar there. So it was an old rivalry, and he was removed due to his low efficiency in tax collection and was further posted out of Madras. See, the rivalry between Nand Kumar and Warren Hastings is starting from 1764 onwards. Shah Alam II Mughal emperor had given the title of Maharaja to Nand Kumar. In 1775, Nand Kumar filed a complaint against Warren Hastings, in the Supreme Court of Bengal, in the Supreme Council of Bengal. My mistake. In the Supreme Council of Bengal, not the Supreme Court, Supreme Council of Bengal, which was the Executive Council. And his complaint was immensely supported by Sir Philip Francis, a member of the Executive Council. Nand Kumar said Warren Hastings had accepted the bribe of 3,50,000 from Munni Begum in 1772. The bribe was paid for making her the regent of the minor Nawab Mubarak ud Daulah. Remember, in the starting of the video, I had spoken about this. The members of the Executive Council had invited Nand Kumar to give testimony in front of, testimony means witness. But Warren Hastings overruled the invitation of the council and Nand Kumar was not able to make the testimony. Instead, now Warren Hastings was finding ways where he can falsely implicate Nand Kumar or falsely lodge FIR or falsely file complaints against Nand Kumar. Soon after this, Warren Hastings, along with his friend Justice Sir MP, who became the Chief Justice of Calcutta, started conspiring against Nand Kumar. They told Kamal Uddin, one of the associate of Nand Kumar, to file a false complaint and make a testimony against Nand Kumar and make the Supreme Court aware that Nand Kumar had the intentions to had falsely make corruption charges against Warren Hastings. See, Nand Kumar wanted to show the Executive Council a document where Munni Begum had paid 3,50,000, and that in that promissory note, Warren Hastings has said that Mubarak ud Daulah will be the Nawab and Munni Begum will be the regent for her. So that document was snatched away from Nand Kumar, and his associate, who was Kamal Uddin, he was bribed by the Warren Hastings to make a false complaint against the Nand Kumar. However, that complaint was there, but nothing more strong action could have been taken. But then another thing happened. In the meantime, a more sensational charges against Nand Kumar was filed, where Mohan Das was representing a bank. That bank, that time there were large number of money lenders. Money lenders that time were called as Mahajans. So one of the Mahajan was Balki Das. So Balki Das, he had appointed Mohan Das as his advocate or a solicitor, who pleaded in the Supreme Court of Bengal that Nand Kumar had done a forgery with the bank. On the charges of forgery, Nand Kumar was arrested and the European jury decided to give him capital punishment. So, according to this, Mehul Choksi and all those who are involved in corruption should be hanged, and who have done the forgery with the banks. Later on, after Warren Hastings returned back where? Returned back to London. He was charged for the judicial murder in the trial of Nand Kumar, which followed by his impeachment process. Now let us see the resignation and impeachment. Now you understand what was the Nand Kumar and why he will be facing the impeachment process. So let us see. The member of the Executive Council of the Governor General were not happy with the Warren Hastings, and among them, the main chief opponent of the opposition was given by Sir Philip Francis. Sir Philip Francis had raised the issue of corruption and better control of East India Company. Thus, the British government decided to introduce East India Company 1784, which is called the It's India. In the video I've discussed, in this video only I've discussed it. While introducing the bill in the British Parliament, the British Prime Minister didn't name Warren Hastings even once. So, it was a tradition that you should use the name of your journal. You should, once speak about the name of your journal, the name of your officer in the British Parliament who had made a particular bill or who had done something good or who is managing the show. But the British Prime Minister did not mention in his whole speech when he was introducing the bill. See, it was a bill. Once the bill has been introduced in the parliament, it is discussed, it is voted, and once it is signed by the emperor of the British crown, then only it becomes an act. So while he was reading the bill, he did not mention the name of Warren Hastings. So Warren Hastings was of the opinion that the British Prime Minister was on his side. He felt betrayed and thus resigned from the post of Governor General. On the return of Warren Hastings, the British Parliament started discussing the conduct of the Governor General, that is of Warren Hastings. So now what has happened? They were discussing, and the main out of that discussion, main thing came up: the expense to the Anglo Wars and the various treaties. In various treaty, Warren Hastings could have signed more and could have got something more also. So it was all presumptions also. Finally, in 1788, a solid point, a big issue which struck the British Parliament was the trial of Nand Kumar, which was debated in the House of Lords. House of Lords says we give the approval. Now let us prosecute Warren Hastings. So the House of Lords had approved for the prosecution and they started the impeachment process. But however, it was a long driven case, and somehow Warren Hastings managed the show. The whole impeachment went off for 17 years, and he was finally, sorry, went off for 7 years. My mistake. Went off for 77 years from 1788 to 1795, and he was finally acquitted from all charges. He was able to manage the show, he was able to influence all the British MPs, and finally all the charges, all the impeachment process were dropped off. I hope you are able to understand Warren Hastings, one of the very important Governor General of Bengal, and you are able to understand how we have district collectors, Kanungo, Benami, all these factors, they were born or they were incorporated during the time of Warren Hastings. In order to make you revise, I have given a gist of all the important events which I have discussed in this video. As a governor of Bengal, Warren Hastings removed the dual system of government. He had moved the treasury from Murshidabad to Calcutta. He appointed the district collector for the purpose of collection of revenue. He stopped the pension of Mughal Emperor Shah Alam II when he accepted the shelter of Marathas and returned back to Delhi under the protection of Madhaji Scindia. He introduced land reforms of 1772, first the quinquennial system and then the annual settlement system, which also got failed. Judicial reforms, he had set up the district courts, civil and the criminal, the Diwani Adalat and the Faujdari, and the appeal to them to the high courts like Sadar Diwani and Sadar Nizamat Adalat. Then Regulating Act came, which made him governor of Bengal as Governor General of Bengal by establishing a central government. It also talked about establishment of Supreme Council of Bengal, also known as the Executive Council, with 4 members. He established a Supreme Court of Bengal. There was a provision to establish Supreme Court of Bengal or Supreme Court of Calcutta, which replaced the Mayor Court of Calcutta in 1784, and Sir M.P. was appointed as the Chief Justice of Supreme Court of Bengal. And he signed a Treaty of Banaras with Nawab of Awadh. Not Asif Ud-Daula, it is Shuja Ud-Daula in 1773. First fought Rohilla War in 1774. The Nawab of Awadh had attacked Rohilla Khand with the help of British troops, signed Treaty of Faizabad with the new Nawab of Awadh, and the new Nawab of Awadh was Asif Ud-Daula. And in this treaty, they pressurized to increase the pay from 2,10,000 to 2,60,000, and the Nawab had to surrender Banaras to the Britishers, and Britishers again sold, the East India Company again sold Banaras to its Zamindar, who was Raja of Banaras, Chet Singh.
Then the trial of Nand Kumar. Hastings was also accused of annexing the Banaras again from Chet Singh in 1780. Uh, uh, and he imposed a fine of rupees 50 lakh. Nawab of Awadh and English army also looted the treasury of Begum of Awadh. Then the Pitt's India Act came, which established board of control. The political functions will go to board of control. The commercial functions too will go to the board of control. This was the only occasion where a British prime minister had to resign, and in fact, in protest, Governor General of Bengal also resigned. The first Anglo-Maratha War took place during his time, the first Anglo-Mysore War. These two wars I have discussed in my previous videos. The first newspaper of India also came, the Hichki's Bengal Gazette. Asiatic Society of Bengal was also established by Sir William Jones, and remember Charles Wilkson, who had translated Gita into English. After his return, he faced the impeachment process, which began in 1788, and finally he was acquitted in 1795. The only Governor General in India to face impeachment. Hope you are able to understand everything. If you still have any doubts, you can please mention in the comment section. And if you want that I should discuss questions with you regarding whatever videos we have done so far, which will be helpful for you in your prelims as well as for your mains answer writing, you may please write it in the comment section. Thank you so much. Hope you have a good day. Please study hard. All the best.